Curious, setting the scene, in 384 BC, human knowledge was a mess. If you wanted to understand the stars, human anatomy, or morality, you lumped it all into a single chaotic bucket called philosophy. There were no distinct scientific disciplines, just a blend of ancient myths and abstract ideas. The leading authority of the time was Plato's Academy. They taught that the physical world was a flawed illusion. To find ultimate truth, you had to look past the dirt and grime of everyday life and contemplate an invisible, perfect realm of abstract forms. But Plato's pupil, Aristotle, rejected this top-down approach. Answers weren't in an alternate dimension, but buried in the physical earth. To decode reality, we couldn't rely on guessing. We had to break the world into distinct categories. He began dividing human inquiry into separate folders: biology, physics, logic, ethics. He built the exact mental filing cabinet that we still use to organize all human knowledge today. He started with what he called theoretical philosophy. His premise was highly practical. Before we can accurately measure the outside world, we have to make sure our own internal thinking is structurally sound. To do this, he invented formal logic, specifically a tool called the syllogism. Think of it as a strict mathematical grammar for human reasoning, designed to strip away emotion and rhetoric. Take a look at this logic diagram. It works like an equation. We input a major premise: all men are mortal. We add a minor premise: Greeks are men. The structure forces an undeniable output: Greeks are mortal. By writing down the exact rules for how premises combine, he turned the act of arguing into a measurable, testable process. You could now mathematically prove whether a thought was structurally valid. With the rules of logic established, he packed up and moved to the island of Lesbos. He called this next branch natural philosophy, and he took his analytical tools straight into the wild. Instead of sitting in a room debating what an animal ought to be, he relied on physical observation. He sliced open fish on the docks. He cracked open fertilized chicken eggs day by day to record exactly how the organs developed over time. This taxonomy tree maps out his findings. He was the first person to group animals by their actual physical traits, creating the chain of being. He split animals with blood, like mammals and birds, from animals without blood, like insects and crustaceans. To explain how all these organisms grew and changed, he built an observational checklist called the 4 causes. It required identifying what a thing is made of, its shape, what triggered its creation, and its ultimate purpose. By cataloging hundreds of species and relentlessly tracking their life cycles, he removed the mysticism from nature. He turned biology into a hard empirical science. He then applied that exact same structural rigor to human behavior, a branch he named practical philosophy. In his writings on ethics, he argued that just like a knife has a specific function, cutting, human beings have a specific function too. For us, it's using reason to achieve a state of active flourishing, which he called eudaimonia. And just like in physics or biology, he believed there was a calculable formula to reach that state. He referred to it as the golden mean. This scale illustrates how it works. Virtue is an exact, organized midpoint between two behavioral failures. If you have too little fear, you act with dangerous rashness. Too much, and you're paralyzed by cowardice. The correct action, courage, locks perfectly into the center point. Being a good person didn't require consulting an oracle or appeasing the gods. It was a practical, organizational problem of finding the mathematical center of your own daily habits. When Aristotle died in 322 BC, he left behind his own school, the Lyceum, and a massive library of categorized observation. Centuries later, medieval Muslim scholars salvaged and translated his texts. They respected his methodical approach so deeply that they elevated him to the ultimate intellectual authority, referring to him simply as the first teacher. That reverence eventually spread into Europe. Scholars like Thomas Aquinas integrated Aristotle's ideas into the bedrock of Western education. But his work became almost too authoritative. His specific conclusions, including some deeply flawed assumptions about physics and the speed of falling objects, were treated as unquestionable dogma, which ironically stalled scientific progress until the Renaissance. Yet his biological observations remained incredibly resilient. Even in the 19th century, Charles Darwin remarked that the greatest thinkers of his own era were mere schoolboys compared to old Aristotle. His specific calculations about gravity and astronomy were eventually overwritten, But his structural method survived. Every time we build a biological taxonomy, map out a logical deduction, or debate the ethics of a new technology, we are still running the operating system that Aristotle built.